Hello learners, welcome to this channel, and in this video I'm going to solve Leetcode 626 question exchange seats. So this question comes under medium category. They have given a table which is called seat. So they have given two columns, one is ID and other one is student. So they have given their respective data types which is integer and varchar. So they have given ID is the primary key column for this table. So what do you mean by a primary key? Primary key is a column which has unique and non-null values. So each row of this table indicates the name and the ID of a student. The ID sequence always starts from 1 and increments continuously. So what are they asking us to find is, write a solution to swap this seat ID of every two consecutive students. If the number of students is odd, the ID of the last student is not swapped. Return the result table ordered by ID in ascending order. So what are they telling us is, okay, so they'll give you a table which is called seats. Okay, so either they may be having even number of students or odd number of students. If there are even number of students, it is easy. So what we can do is, with two consecutive students, we can exchange their IDs and we can return the result table. But the problem arises when we have an odd number of students. So when we have odd number of students, the last one student will be left. So the last ID will not be swapped. So let me show it to you. Let me make you understand by considering this example that they have given. So they have given a table. ID and student are the two columns. These are the IDs and these are the student names. So they're asking us to exchange the IDs, right? So it would be like for Abbott, it would be the ID will be exchanged with Doris because it is the consecutive one. So it will be exchanged. So Abbott will be having the ID 2 and Doris will be having the ID 1. So for Emerson, the next consecutive student is Green. So though both of these IDs will be exchanged. So Emerson will be having an ID of 4 and Green will be having an ID of 3. And James, as this table has odd number of students. So what they have told, when they have an odd number of students, the ID of the last student is not swapped. So we need to return the same. That is James, it will be 5. So that is what the result table that they have given. For Doris, it will be 1. Abbott it will be 2, Green it will be 3, Emerson it will be 4, and James it will be 5. Okay, so how we can solve this question? So the logic here I'm going to use is, we can use the window function which is lag and lead. We can find the, okay, if this is the ID, what is the next ID? So after 1 it will be 2. So after 2 it will be 3. After 3 it will be 4. After 4 it will be 5. After 5 there is no ID. So it will be null. So that will be the next. So I'm going to create a column called next. And I'll also going to create another column which is called previous by using the lag function. So how? For 1 there is no previous ID. So it will be null. And for 2 it will be 1. For 3 it will be 2. For 4 it will be 3. For 5 it will be 4. So let me write it down and make you understand how the table exactly looks like. Okay. So let me copy this table over here. Okay. So there will be a two column which is called next and another column which is called previous. Okay. So the next of 2 is 3 is next of 1 ID is 2. Right. So next of 2 is 3. Next of 3 is 4. After 4 what comes? 5 comes, right? So after 5 there is no ID. So I'm going to return null. So the same happens over here. Okay, so previous one, there is no ID previous to 1. So I'm going to return null. So okay, the same here. Previous to 2, it will be 1. Okay, so previous to 3, it is going to be 2, and previous to 4, it is going to be 3, and previous to 5, it is going to be 4. Okay, so this is how it is going to look like. Okay, so let me start writing the SQL query for the same. So how we can create these two columns by using the window function which is lag and lead. Okay, so from the table called seat, what we need to select is, I'm going to select all the rows, sorry, all the columns. Okay, I'm going to use a window function which is called lead in order to find the next number. This next column, I'm going to calculate it by using this window function. So lead of ID, whenever you are using a window function, we need to use the over clause. So I'm going to order it by the ID. Order by the ID. So everything will be ordered by ID in ascending order. And I'm going to alias it as next. That is what is I have written over here. Okay. And then I'm going to use a function which is called lag in order to create a previous column. Okay. So lag of ID over order by ID. Okay. And I'm going to alias it as previous. Okay. So prev. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it, I'm going to use common expression table in order to store it in one table. So what this nick table will be having? Nick table will be having all these columns, which is ID, student, next, and prev. But we don't need these. We need to exchange it, right? So for abort, the ID should be exchanged with 2. It should be exchanged with Doris. For Emerson, the ID must be exchanged with Green. And for James, since they have odd number of elements over here, so it should be same as the ID. So how we can get that? So what we can do is, we can use this logic that, so whenever the ID is odd, okay, so I'm going to return next value. Okay, so whenever the ID is even, I'm going to return the previous value. Okay, so whenever the ID is odd, I'm going to return the next value. Whenever the ID is even, I'm going to return the previous value. And whenever the ID is odd and the next is null, I'm going to return the ID value. So that is what the logic I'm going to use over here. So let me write it down so it will be more clear. So from the table with common expression table called neck, what and all I require, I need. So how are you going to apply all these conditions? So we can use the case when clause in order to apply it. Okay. So I'm going to use case when. Okay. So whenever the ID modulo 2 equal to 1, it means that whenever the ID is odd. Okay. And next is not null. Okay, so that is here whenever the ID is odd and the next is not null. So at that time what I'm going to do is I'm going to return, then I'm going to return the next value. Okay, when the ID modulo 2 equal to 0, that is when the ID is even. So at that time I'm going to return the previous value. So what happens is it is going to swap. So the abort will be having the ID 2 and Doris will be having the ID 1. So that is how I'm going to swap it. Okay. So whenever the ID is even, then I'm going to return the previous value. Else, whenever it is odd and whenever the next is null, then I'm going to return the ID value. So that is, you don't have to explicitly write that case. That is the left out case whenever above both of the condition does not apply. So it automatically comes to this case. So I'm going to return the ID. So whenever you are writing a case when statement, you have to make sure that you're going to end it. Okay. And what you need to end it as. So it is aliased as ID in the output table. So I'm going to alias it as ID. All right. And we just don't need the ID. We also need the student name. So I'm going to write student. Okay. So they have also explicitly mentioned that return the result table ordered by ID in ascending order. So at last, after doing all this, we need to order by ID. So by default, it will be ascending order. If they have mentioned it to be in descending order, you could have written it as DESC. Since this is not the case and by default it is ascending and they have also asked it to be ascending order. So I'm just going to write it as order by ID. So that is how it is the entire thing. So let me explain the code again. So what I did was I used a common expression table in order to find the next values by using the lead function, that is the window function, and for finding the previous value, I have used the lag window function. After finding it, I have enclosed it into a common expression table which is named as Nick. And after that, what I did was I used a simple logic in order to exchange the ID values. So what I did was whenever the ID is an odd number, and the next value is not null, I'm going to return next value. So what happens is this both is going to be exchanged. So a bot will be having a ID of 2, and whenever the ID is even, I'm going to return the previous value. So what happens is it is going to be exchanged. So Taurus will be having a ID of 1. The same goes for Emerson and Green, but whenever you will be having a odd number of values or odd number of IDs. So whenever it is odd and the next value is null, at that time, I'm just going to return the ID as they have asked in the question. So that is the simple logic that I have used in order to exchange. So the result table is going to look like this. Alright, so let me remove this and run the code and show it to you whether it works perfectly fine or it throws any error. I hope it works well. Yeah, so they have considered the same input example as they have given in the example, and we have got the same output as the expected output. So let me submit it and see whether it runs or it accepts all the test cases or not. Yeah, it is accepted. So it is accepted. It has passed all the test cases, and yeah, that is the solution for the question Leetcode 626 exchange seats. I hope you have understood this question. I have simply used the window functions and common expression table in order to solve this question as simple as possible. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.